We are going to head on now to speaking with Jonathan Eyal. He's going to tell us a little bit more about his perspective on what has gone on here today. Jonathan, can you hear me? Jonathan Eyal.
Hello, I can hear you perfectly all right.
All right. Okay. Jonathan, let me ask you, tell us a little bit about how the U.S. can repair relations now with its allies. I mean, could this relationship be repaired at all? I mean, given what we've seen today?
You mean the relationship with its European allies?
Absolutely.
Well, I think that actually the rift is going to be in suspended animation, as it were. Namely, the serious difficulties that exist between the United States on the one hand and France and Germany on the other are now going to be put on freeze. It is rather interesting that over the last 24 hours we had a statement from France saying that should the Iraqi regime use any chemical weapons or other weapons of mass destruction, then France would immediately join the war on the side of the United States. Of course, it's a bit of a contradictory statement. France up to now opposed the war, claiming that there is no immediate evidence that Saddam Hussein has such weapons. Now it is slightly changing the tune. There is a feeling throughout Europe that now the debate should move to the reconstruction of Iraq at the end of the war. And indeed, this very morning in Europe, the European Union foreign ministers and heads of government will get together to discuss precisely what Europe could contribute to the reconstruction of Iraq. So there is a feeling that as the guns have started, it is time for most of Europe, especially those who oppose the United States, to keep silent.
Jonathan, let's talk about that then, the post-war Iraq, a little bit more. What do you think is going to happen with the rest of the world, and what will their role be as far as pitching in for this post-war Iraq?
Well, we've had some contradictory statements from a variety of countries. Of course, many of the Asian countries have kept very quiet about what their position would be in the aftermath of the war. Europe, as always, has made more noise and, as always, a bit of a cacophony. On the one hand, we had people in the European Commission, the executive body of the Union, saying more or less openly that since this war is supposedly an American war, then Europe will find it very difficult to fund or to participate in any of the reconstruction efforts at the end of it. At the same time, let us not forget that Europe is not talking in a united voice on this one. This has been as much an internal European dispute as a dispute between the Europeans and the United States. So countries like Britain, Italy, Spain, the East Europeans, countries that altogether provide about 60% of the decision-making votes in the European Union, will be pushing for a close cooperation with the US in the reconstruction of Iraq. The key is going to be under which mandate is it going to be? Is it going to be a United Nations mandate? Or is it going to be another international arrangement done on a bilateral basis between key contributing countries?
Jonathan, one last quick question for you. You know, back in the Gulf War, we know that what happened afterwards and largely the military campaign, the bill for that was footed by Kuwait. But of course, the mission was very different then. This mission is now to have regime change. So who then will foot the bill? Will that mostly be the United States, or where do you think, what can we learn from that?
Well, there is no doubt that a lot of the European countries will be asked to contribute, as indeed would a lot of the Middle Eastern countries be asked to contribute. It is one thing for Middle Eastern pro-Western governments to refuse at the moment to consider any kind of assistance. It is quite another when a new government is put in place. So the United States will have to be engaged in some careful footwork, in diplomatic terms, immediately at the end of this war with potential allies. Now, I suspect that there will be a contribution from Europe, but let us not fool ourselves. There is also going to be a rather unseeming and rather peculiar barter dispute across the Atlantic between the Europeans and the Americans. A lot of European countries are owed money by Iraq. A lot of these debts are not for very honorable causes. For instance, a lot of weapon sales to Iraq in the 1970s and the 1980s. A lot of these European countries are expecting to be repaid very quickly, which is precisely what what the new Iraqi regime cannot do. So the question of money will be extremely complicated. If we're lucky, it would be discussed very calmly and very honorably. If we are not, we are going to witness quite a dispute across the Atlantic.
All right, we certainly hope it will go that way. Jonathan Eyal with the Royal United Services Institute for Defensive Studies, thank you for your time.